Alright, welcome to the channel. My name is James and today I'm going to walk you through how I painted the green skin on my Ork commandos. All the paints you'll need will be listed below in the description along with the Games Workshop equivalents, so let's get into it. Alright, this is what you click the thumbnail for. We're going to be painting that super saturated 90s, early noughties style Ork skin with the integration of those Caucasian skin tones. To paint this, you're going to need 5 different paints, potentially 4 depending on if there's any scarification on your model. But you're going to need Merm green, Slimer green, Carroburg crimson, Cadian Fleshtone and Averland sunset. I'll put them in the description along with the Games Workshop equivalent. Gonna start off just applying a nice simple base coat of Merm green all over the flesh. This is going to act as our recess shade across the entire model. Then creating a 50-50 mix of Slimer green and Merm green, we're going to start blocking in the big volumes and muscle bellies across the model. Leave some shading in the deeper recesses, but other than that, just block in the basic shapes so we can start highlighting and smoothing out the transitions. You'll likely need to apply 2 coats of this to ensure you get a fully saturated colour. Any of the areas that you've seen in the picture that are going to be pink or have that cream tone to them, you're still going to apply this over those sections as we build that up with the Cadian Fleshtone later on in the video. Right now we're working with an Artis Opus Series S size 2 because we want to move quickly across the model and block in all of those shapes. Followed up with some pure Slimer green. Leave some of the previous layer showing, but again we're just looking to pick out the details and the big muscle bellies across the model. Focus on creating those volumetric highlights and really emphasizing the shape and structure of the sculpt. For anyone that was into the hobby back in the late 90s, early thousands, Slimer green is really similar to Snot green, so if you have that in your collection you can use that as an alternative. So as you can see, I'm not too worried about creating smooth transitions or gradients at this point. I'm more worried about blocking in the shapes and creating nice opaque layers that I can build upon later. I've also switched to a size 0 now just to make it a wee bit easier to navigate around the model because some of the areas are quite difficult to get to. Again, we want to use the Slimer green to build up those areas where we're going to be applying the flesh tones later on. You also need at least 2 layers of this to build up a nice saturated and opaque colour. So to start softening out these transitions and the skin tones, we're going to use some stippling and we're going to use that 50-50 mix of Merm green and Slimer green. Essentially what we're doing here is creating some distortion and some noise between the different highlight layers. This also creates some texture and imparts that kind of diffuse reflection type that we would often associate with skin. So whenever you're doing this, thin down the colour to an almost glazed consistency, load up your brush and just stipple over those different layers and different steps within your colours. This will just help to soften everything out and you can do it over multiple passes. And you don't even need to worry about being too precise whenever you're doing this because we're using the thinner, more transparent layers. So now we're going to start building up those pinky Caucasian flesh tones. We're doing that with a mix of Cadian Fleshtone and Slimer green. We're just going to initially start blocking in some areas where the skin might be a wee bit thinner or it might have sort of a different texture or different pigmentation. So we're adding these pink flesh tones for a few different reasons. The first being, I think it looks cool and makes your orcs more exciting. The second reason is to add another form of contrast by using complementary colours. Cadian Fleshtone is quite pink, so it's basically just a desaturated red. And we know red and green are opposite each other on the colour wheel. This will make our colours pop a bit more and add some extra vibrancy to the greens. And the third reason is it's lore accurate. I'm pretty sure in the Eisenhorn books it mentions somewhere about orcs having red blood, so introducing these warmer tones and these pink tones gives that impression of the red-blooded circulatory system. So the main areas that I like to pick out whenever I'm doing this are going to be the elbows, the knuckles, fingers, the palms, the belly. If you have a face on the model, you probably want to pick out around the cheeks, the lips, the nose and the ears. Be sure to block in the stomach. We aren't painting turtle shells here, so we don't want deep separation between the abs. We can pick out that detail later on with some additional highlights. Adding more Cadian Fleshtone into that previous mix, we're probably around a 50-50 of Cadian Fleshtone to Slimer green now. We're just going to start building up those highlights. We also want to start introducing some more texture to these areas, so you can start building up some lines and striations around the elbows, in the palms, maybe even on the lips as well, to give that indication that they're maybe chapped, dry, weather beaten. Just add some more variety and some more interest to your skin. By adding these bits of texture across the model around the elbows or into the palms, it helps to soften out these transitions as well, and means we don't have to come back in with any glazes or any additional techniques to create soft transitions across the model. And again, we don't need to worry about creating definition or separation within the abs at this point. We'll definitely be doing that later. So just block in those colours. Move quickly, move efficiently. That's what we're aiming for here. So now we're into our Cadian Fleshtone dominant mix, and you can see it's getting quite desaturated now. That's because of the relationship to the reds in the Cadian Fleshtones and obviously the green in the Slimer green. Whenever you're applying this layer, try to be a wee bit more precise. Look to pick out the details and where you want to draw some attention and focus within these more Caucasian flesh tone areas. So start picking out the knuckles, the tips of the fingers, the ridges and lines within the palms, and same with the elbows as well. When it comes to the belly, we can start creating some transitions now and start picking out some details within the abs and the musculature in this section. For any art purists out there, or anyone that wants to look at this in a bit more detail, if you want to Google the term Vidacio, it's basically how we use green as a foundation for flesh tones. It's quite interesting, and it's one of the principles I used for painting this. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps promote the videos. Also, don't forget to give that subscribe a wee slap and a tickle. And again, I'm not too worried about the scars or any of those additional details within the stomach right now. We'll tidy those up later with a bit of Carroburg Crimson. Finally, we're just going to use some pure Cadian flesh tone for the final highlights in these areas. So you just want to focus on some small areas where you can really emphasize the details within the sculpt. So we're just picking out those ridges within the palm, tapping each of the knuckles just to bring in some detail there, heading towards the very tip of the elbow. Again, just trying to add in some more additional texture and detail at this point. When it comes to the abs, this is where we really create that separation and detail within the structure of the musculature here. So just add in some highlights towards the top and the edge of these sections. Now it's time to highlight up the rest of the green skin. We're going to be using Averland Sunset and Slimer Green here to create our highlight colours. If you highlight greens with yellows, you get more vibrancy and more pop than you would if you use white. White will just desaturate the colour and make your orcs look flat, whereas this just helps to bring in some more colour and some more vibrancy to the model. We're going to be focusing on some of the bigger muscle bellies, heading up towards the shoulders and the top of the back. Not too worried about adding in too many additional highlights to the hands, just picking out some of the bone structure, some of the tendons within those areas. But you can already see the difference that adding that yellow to the green makes. Just pops a lot more, becomes a lot more vibrant, it's a lot more saturated, just a lot more interesting to look at. So again, we're just blocking in those big muscle bellies, blocking in those big details, and just starting to really fill out those shapes and the form of the orc. Continue to build your highlights and refine your highlight pattern by adding more Averland Sunset into the mix. Whenever you do this, start to pick out more striations and more details within the muscle bellies. Also start to focus on the areas that are higher up the model and being affected by the primary light source. So you can see I'm not too worried about adding these additional highlights into the hands. This creates a gradient across the model, focusing our attention towards the head and towards the most impactful parts of the model. And you can see I'm still working with big, broad, sweeping strokes here. We're trying to cover, again, a lot of area quite quickly to ensure that this is quite efficient and can be used across a number of characters or across your entire army. So at this point it's pretty much fair game as to how far you want to push these highlights. If you want to keep going, continue to add more Averland Sunset into the mix and push those highlights a wee bit further. But at this point I was satisfied with how the skin looked. I just added in a couple more details around the top of the back, just picking out that vertebrae structure, and after this I was happy with how the green skin looked. Finally, just to pick out those scars across the belly, just give them a quick wash with some Carroburg Crimson just to separate them from the rest of the skin tones there, and then added in some quick highlights of Cadian Fleshtone just to pick out the details. And with that, your Ork skin tones are complete. Let's get him on the spinny thing and get a proper look. So here he is, all finished and on the base. You can see those pink flesh tones almost act as like a frame around the face with the hand up there as well, helping to draw focus in. Then we got those super saturated greens or those stippled transitions into those deep dark recesses, creating a lot of separation, definition and contrast within the musculature of the model. If you'd like to see how I painted any other parts of this model, feel free to drop a comment below and there'll be a tutorial coming for the base. If you want to share any of your work, head on over to the Discord and get involved with the community. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions for future videos, please drop them below in the comments. And if you want to show me what you've been working on, head on over to the Discord and drop some pics into the whips or the completed projects. I'd love to see what you've been painting. If you'd like to get some personalized coaching and tuition, head on over to the Patreon and check out the available packages. There'll be something there to suit everybody. All links can be found below in the description. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you at the next one.